This video is sponsored by Magellan TV, a long-time supporter of this channel and my other History Time. We've teamed up to offer you a free trial of this amazing documentary streaming service. But more on that later in the video. The Sutton Hoo helmet. It needs little introduction. When lifted out of a Suffolk burial mound in 1939, just as the world balanced on the precipice of a new world war, this incredibly ornate, high-status helm, surrounded by an elaborate array of grave goods, was the greatest archaeological treasure ever found from England's early Middle Ages. Only scant fragments being found before. Dated to the early 7th century AD, a disunited era of chaos and turmoil, immediately following the collapse of Imperial Rome. Still generally referred to as the Dark Ages. As far as that narrative is concerned, this expertly crafted item, along with the plethora of other incredible finds discovered at this site, shouldn't exist. Who did it belong to? In reality, we simply don't know. The Venerable Bede, England's first historian, writing a century later, tells us of a mighty East Anglian king named Redwald. One of the first Bretwalders, or Briton rulers, a title reserved for the greatest of kings. The burial mound here at Sutton Hoo might have belonged to him. Yet, just as easily, it could have belonged to another. Clearly crafted by a master smith, or a group of master smiths, working within a cultural tradition dating back generations. In terms of its origins, this helm, coated with the animal art style and warrior motifs of the Germanic world of old, is equally related to late Roman cavalry helmets. This is an item straight out of Beowulf and the sagas of old, interred in the ground in a burial mound overlooking the River Deben in Suffolk, all those centuries ago. England was born on rivers like this, arteries to the outside world, bringing in riches from lands far away. Riches that could be given to retainers, retainers who could win lands. "1,300 years ago, upon the death of this ruler, a massive ship was dragged out of the river here by mourning followers, and thence up the hillside to an open grassy ridge, to be interred here along with everything needed to go on ruling in the afterlife, overlooking the source of his power, the river leading on into the sea." This river, the Deben, smaller and thus easier to control than the neighbouring Orwell, which leads to Ipswich, another early Anglian trading port, was essentially a private waterway for the early East Anglian kings, allowing them to cement their power and status amongst the neighbouring Anglian clans, and even Saxon and Jutish settlers to the south and west. Newcomers in the wake of Romano-British collapse. may have even been control over these waterways, cutting a swathe through eastern Britain, and thus the trade moving along them into the wider world, that allowed the early dynasty of kings here, known as the Woofingers, to form one of the first imperiums in the emerging Anglo-Saxon world. Claiming descent from Caesar as well as Woden. Perhaps belaying the roots of this region as a regional power centre endowed by Roman officials right at the end of occupation in the late 4th or early 5th centuries. There is even some archaeological evidence to support this. During the time of King Redwald in the 7th century, all seagoing ships coming in from the east would pay homage and tribute here to the king. Perhaps some of them arriving directly from the still existing Eastern Roman Empire. We don't know for sure whether individuals made this journey, but their trade goods certainly did. But where did Redwald hold his court? Where did he rule from? Evidence from this time is tantalisingly scarce. Of all the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms of Britain to hold sway after the fall of Rome and before the coming of the Normans in 1066, only a handful of sites have been located, let alone excavated. But now, in 2020, after decades of painstakingly careful excavation, in one area of eastern Suffolk at least, that's all beginning to come to an end, giving real insights into the birth of kingship in early England. Following the course of the River Deben from the sea, 10 miles inland stand the burial mounds of the kings of old. But another 4 or 5 miles further upriver is another site, famous in recent years as the focal point of a UFO incident, often called Britain's Roswell. This is Rendlesham Forest. But little green men aren't the only secrets this woodland has to offer. Amidst great tracts of farmland, neighbouring ominous trees, a massive Anglo-Saxon royal centre has been located and excavated here over the last decade, offering up huge amounts of evidence from this long gone by age. Coinage, timber halls, metalwork, much of it clearly high status, alongside trade goods from Merovingian Francia and the far-off Byzantine world. The secret to the success of this people, perhaps, and maybe the Anglo-Saxon world in general. In its time, this was a bustling community, just one of many in the region, but a massive one nonetheless. Similar sites like Yevering in Northumbria, if placed over Rendlesham, would cover just a small corner of the site. This was a well-connected royal centre, with stables, smithies, feasting halls, and what is being described as a palace. Surrounded by more transitory housing for followers of the king. We don't know for sure, but it may be that much of the intricate metalwork found at Sutton Hoo was made here at Rendlesham. A site which predates and postdates activity at Sutton Hoo, just a few miles downriver. The two sites, no doubt, intimately connected. Though there is always more work to do, much of the excavations at Rendlesham are now complete, offering up amazing insights into this lost world. Let's take a look. Hello friends, Pete Kelly here, broadcasting from the History Time headquarters, 10,000 miles beneath the Earth's surface. While you're here, I'd like to give a recommendation to the sponsor of this video. It's Magellan TV, the premier documentary streaming service on the web. For just a small monthly fee, you can find thousands of documentaries on almost any subject you can think of, streamed directly to your phone, your tablet and your smart TV. This is technology that the Venerable Bede, a lifelong scholar, would be absolutely amazed by. My current recommendation is The Lives of the Pharaohs, a fascinating look at ancient Egypt and archaeology. A must-watch for seekers of knowledge of the ancient world. I've teamed up with the guys at Magellan to offer you an exclusive month-long free trial. Head on over to try.magellantv.com/Pete Kelly History or click on the link in the description below. Now, back to the early Middle Ages. Rendlesham. Today, it's a small village near the town of Woodbridge in Suffolk. A great manor house once stood here, demolished in 1949. Now, it's mostly made up of woodland and farm. Sited in a relatively untouched region of England's flat, expansive eastern coastline. When field walking and metal detectors uncovered pottery sherds here in the 1980s, dating to between the 7th and 9th centuries AD, a time when Anglo-Saxons ruled this land, it didn't come as much of a surprise to historians. After all, the place is first recorded by Bede in the 8th century AD as Rendlesham, the king's village. Perhaps deriving from the Old English word rendle, meaning little shore, or the homestead belonging to a man named Rendle. According to Bede, writing in around 730 AD, discussing events that took place in the centuries before his time, Rendlesham was a royal centre of authority for the kings of the East Angles, dynasts of the Wuffinger line, one of the most powerful royal families of the 6th and 7th centuries, claiming descent back across the waves to ancestral Scandinavia. Still vehemently pagan hundreds of years later. Yet Bede was a Christian, and much had changed in the world by his time. According to his magnum opus, the Ecclesiastical History of the English People, King Swithelm, son of Saexbold of the East Saxons, who ruled from around 660 to 664, was baptised at Rendlesham by Saint Ched, a fellow Northumbrian countryman to Bede, and one of the most influential church figures in early Anglo-Saxon Christianity. King Ethelwald of East Anglia, successor to Redwald, still ruling over an immensely powerful state, though one which had declined by Bede's time, acted as godfather. Swithelm died around the time of the Great Plague of 664, and he may have even been buried at Rendlesham. Though many have argued the proximity of the Sutton Hoo ship burial alone surely must indicate an intimate connection between Sutton Hoo and the East Anglian royal house. In reality, besides Bede's writings, hugely oversimplified and not strictly contemporary. Aside from archaeology, we know very little. Indeed, the exact location of the royal settlement at Rendlesham had eluded historians and archaeologists for centuries, until now. By 2008, following a number of reports of illegal metal detecting, the archaeologists finally moved in to Rendlesham, sparking off a number of years of systematic metal detecting surveys across the landscape, eventually locating some 5,000 objects dating to all manner of historical periods. More than 1,000 of them, however, have been dated to between the 5th and 8th centuries, the heyday of East Anglia, many of which now reside at the Ipswich Museum. Since the 1980s, great leaps forward have been made in the methods of archaeological analysis and our understanding of the early medieval past. This, along with funding by the National Lottery and the painstaking, studious work of archaeologists and volunteers, eventually led to a 50-hectare site being pinpointed by aerial photography and geophysical survey, just 4 miles from Sutton Hoo. While Sutton Hoo is all about death, this 120-acre settlement at Rendlesham is all about life. Evidence of ordinary craftspeople and villagers getting on with their daily lives. An incredibly rare look into everyday life at an early Anglian stronghold. Just one of many that once crisscrossed the landscape of eastern Britain, where early Anglo-Saxon kings and warlords would have stayed when passing through their lands, feasting their followers, administering justice, collecting taxes and tribute. Unfortunately, as is almost always the case with the early medieval past, buildings, clothing and tools were almost all made of wood or other perishable materials which have long since eroded away. What we can see, however, is metal. Thousands upon thousands of items having been recovered, including intricate metalwork, jewellery, gold, coins and weights. High status items fit for royalty and elite warriors. The sheer quality of much of the metalwork here is astounding, signifiers of immense wealth during this time when most people in Britain had very little. One of the most fascinating finds at Rendlesham, however, must be the remains of a building thought to have once served as a royal house or palace, a mead hall straight from the lines of Beowulf. The remains of this massive structure, measuring 23 by 9 metres, would have been about the size of a large detached house from our time. We don't know for sure, but it may even be the palace referred to by Bede in the 8th century. A place to feast loyal followers and regale retainers with stories of the deeds of ancestors. Maybe Redwald himself once sat beneath these timbers during the yearly tours of his realm, demonstrating his magnificence to his people. Of course, we don't know if the Sutton Hoo helmet did belong to Redwald, and there's every chance another helm and ship burial to match could one day be found. Another Redwald. perhaps belonging to an unrecorded rival king Bede was either unaware of or neglected to mention because of a hesitancy of that king to convert to Christianity. We know that Bede oversimplified his works, often talking of one king, when in reality there would have been many. What Rendlesham does do, however, like the similar site of Prittlewell in Essex, is illuminate the murky transition from 5th and 6th century influential local families, probably descended from Roman-appointed Germanic mercenaries, as well as local Romano-British leaders, to, by the late 6th and early 7th centuries, anointed regional dynasts. A backwater eventually becoming immensely powerful due to links to the sea, and the breakdown of any sort of regional authority in the rest of the country. Only time will tell what more sites are located, and what more secrets Rendlesham has to offer. Analysis and investigations at Rendlesham are ongoing, but if you'd like to keep up to date with the latest finds and scholarly evaluation, head on over to the website of the Suffolk County Council Archaeological Service. They're currently running a series of online lectures where you can find out the very latest information completely free of charge. There are links to everything in the description below. You've been watching Archaeology News. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Tell me what you think in the comments, and I'll see you next time.